And welcome back to the Foody for Thought podcast. I am your gracious host, Kung Foody, otherwise known as James Foody. And before we get started on today's podcast episode, which I am really excited to share with you today, I want to go over two things. First and foremost, I have been having some technical difficulties with the microphone and the software in regards to the audio and my voice. And I know it's not my voice problem because I have a megaphone instilled in me, so it ain't me. But I've been playing a lot with the settings on here, so I apologize for throughout the podcast. You're going to hear some times where there's maybe a 2 or 3 second window where it's just no voice, I get cut out. So I apologize for that in advance. Secondly, I've been a little absent on the podcast scene because I've been working with a business coach, and we've been taking all the time on the days that I do podcasts, whether it was just her and I or when I've been doing it in a group setting. So now that I'm back and I got that more in order and I have my podcast days changed in regards to my schedule, we're back on weekly episodes. So thank you once again for joining me, and I'm going to share at the end of the podcast what I've been working with in regards to my fitness business, taking it in person to online. So if that resonates with you at all, make sure to stick around to the end. In the meanwhile, please like, subscribe, follow, help me win the algorithm so we can take over the world together. And with that said, without further ado, please enjoy the 5th episode of the Foody for Thought podcast. I want to talk about today's topic because this one I'm really passionate about, and I know it's been requested amongst a lot of people. And that's talking about relationships. And it's one of my favorite things to talk about because I like talking about how to make a relationship great. Whether that would be a friendship or obviously like an intimate relationship or families, coworkers, bosses, you name it. How to make a relationship great, there are certain principles to go by, and especially when talking about intimate relationships like we're going to be talking about today. Boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, wife, doesn't matter who you're dating, but there are certain principles to follow and a theme that I want to talk about today, because relationships fail, and I really want to discuss this, and I want to share this with you because I had a friend of mine send me a TikTok that about a month-ish ago that completely changed the scope of how not only that I view relationships, but I qualify relationships, whether that would be, again, intimate relationships, friendships, how I spend time with family and coworkers, and not that I really have any coworkers, but any relationship that you can apply this to where you want to make better, or if you want to draw boundaries in. But we're staying on the topic of obviously intimate relationships. So let's talk about this. The TikTok my friend sent me talked about how people prioritize chemistry. And there's 2 missing steps to that. Anybody who's out there who's listening, like if you're listening and you've had a failed relationship, I'm sure, reflecting back on it, what was the thing that brought you close to that person in the first place? Or just brought... And it was more than likely the chemistry that you both felt between each other, right? Something was there. There was that spark. There was that eye gaze. There was that exchange of energy where you recognized each other for a split moment. And I know a lot of relationships, great relationships that have started that way too, where there's that love at first sight sort of thing, where there's something that you recognize and you don't know exactly, you can't pinpoint it. You don't know exactly what it is, but something about that other person is drawing you to them. And that other person feels the same thing mutually. So you two come together, somehow one approaches the other person, and you go out on a date, and you're feeling great about this other person. You feel great about this other person when you're in their circle. Life's a little bit lighter, and you walk around a little lighter. And then you go on and get to know each other, and then you realize that you're compatible. Or maybe not, but you're willing to, maybe sacrifice a couple things or negotiate a couple of things, right? And that's a very practical piece of advice, I think, being able to negotiate within relationships. However, I'm getting somewhere with this. And there's obviously boundaries, to learn how to put up boundaries. And then, after you find out that you're compatible and you might start dating, then there comes a time where red flags might start to appear. And green flags might start to appear because everybody has their quantities of green flags and red flags. But over time, things will start to expose themselves, whether for bad or good. And a lot of times where relationships fail or they go wrong is that a lot of times they paint red flags green. And they negotiate with themselves. And that comes from a lack of boundaries or a lack of values or a lack of unawareness. And that's not always meaning that they're a bad person. That doesn't make someone a bad person if they're just unaware of that. If they choose to be unaware of that, if they're willing to work on that, though, and to be able to learn that about themselves, to be able to expand their self-awareness and awareness around them of the habits that they've created over time and that they practice to today, I would say that's a green flag. Even if you don't know it, but you're willing to be open-minded on the other person's side to be able to learn that about yourself, I think that's a great green flag. We're going to talk about that later on, too. But if you've noticed, by the order of operations that I just said, where they fail is they get exposed later. The order of operations is, step one, we have this initial chemistry. And two, after getting a little bit of time, or a lot of time, depending, everyone has different length of talking stages, they realize, hey, we're pretty decently compatible. Or, we're not so compatible, but I'm willing to work on it because I have these feelings for you and I love you. And then afterwards, after you've made this agreement to go out or date or get married or whatever, things will start to expose themselves. Habits of battle between each other are exposed. And some people might hang on to their spouses or their partners, whether a guy or girl, doesn't matter, again, whatever type of relationship that you have. That relationship will get a little bit exposed over time because you've realized that you aren't compatible, or there's some red flags about one person in your eyes that you've decided to paint green, and people don't typically realize that up until they're broken up. And a friend or a family member had to tell them, be like, hey, so that person hid bodies under their garage. You might want to cut that out. Now, I'm not saying, obviously, the more extreme case, but, they were choosing not to better their communication skills. They are always led by their feelings. They're not willing to negotiate. They're not willing to communicate back and forth with each other. I think willingness is a big red flag. If you're not willing, is a big red flag. Because that's just what separates the open-mindedness and the ability to start communicating. But the problem is, just like I said, going back, just bringing it back, concluding that for a moment, where most people fail is their order of operation is actually backwards from where you would want it to be. What's the problem with starting with chemistry? It feels good, but have you ever had a relationship that failed and you've had this honeymoon stage and it might last upwards of a year, maybe 3 months, and you're feeling good, but then one person typically will like somebody more. And there's that, anxious versus avoidant attachment style. As long as one person's a little more anxious than the other of wanting to save the relationship, fight for the relationship, show their worth to the other person, as long as that's going on, there will still be a high, because that initial honeymoon phase, everybody's at a high. Typically, both parties are at a high. But what will sustain that is if one person's being avoided, somebody's maintaining that high. There's that chase amongst each other. And sometimes what'll happen is that will flip-flop. So you'll have this situationship where you're so focused on the emotional state between each other and the chemistry between each other that you're not even focused on how compatible that you are. You're not focused on the green flag. And if I'm talking too much, my microphone is showing me that I'm in the red, and I know I talk loud. I'm a human megaphone. So hopefully everything is getting caught. Hopefully everything is being caught in the podcast. So if not, my bad. I'll learn that for later. Bringing that back, though, what'll happen is as long as you are led by your emotions and the chemistry, things will expose themselves too late. And the farther that you go, the harder that it's going to be able to decide for yourself if you two are actually compatible or if this relationship is actually going to succeed. Like I said, by the time you go to review all the red flags and the green flags is typically around the time of the breakup, either beforehand or after. And some people just skip that stage altogether. They fully acknowledge the red and the green flags, but will just refuse to do anything with it. And I've seen a lot of different instances. They feel as if it's too late to start, to start over. But because they've been dating that person for years, or they just have this anxious attachment style that the need to prove their worth to somebody, it will bog them down. It'll hold them. And unless you fully address those parts about yourself, you are always going to be operating from that standpoint. At some point, we need to develop and recognize and mature. We mature ourselves to be able to recognize that it's not sustainable. And as a matter of fact, it's not even safe. As a partner, and a high-quality partner, don't you want to feel as safe as possible so that I can just express freely? We all want to express freely, but we can't do that if we don't feel safe with our partner. And that falls on both the man and the woman side, or the woman and man. You know what I mean. I'm just going off of a traditional man and woman, so don't come for me in the comments, all right? Fuckers. Anyway, what I found too, reflecting back on that, is if you are led by love, it's going to be harder to sustain having respect for your partner. And when I say love, I mean the feeling of love, like that infatuation, the butterflies, that on cloud nine, everything is going great. That is going to block your ability to truly respect your partner. And we're going to cover that a little bit later, but I would much rather at this point, after failed relationships and successful relationships that have failed, because that's a real thing too, I have learned that I would value being respected more than I feel loved, because I'm straight. If a woman really respects me, I know that there is going to be that consistency. And if you know what love languages are, everybody's love language is consistency. Even for those who have like anxious attachment styles and avoidance, stay as long as you are consistent on the chasing end of the other side. And people who are in the anxious attachment seat of the bus, if they're in that driver's seat, as long as you're consistent in being avoidant, I'll stay at this high as long as you'll stay around. If you'll show me that little, you'll give me that little bait every once in a while, you'll give me that minimal affection of love, like that as lowest standard of as possible. You show up to my school event that I was being a part of, and all of a sudden I'm like right back on cloud nine because you did the bare minimum of just showing up to support me. Like, guys, come on. And this might be, let me say this. This might be the first time some of you have actually heard this or even thinking about this. I'm not obviously pointing fingers. I'm not saying, like, what are you thinking? I hope, though, while you're listening, I hope while you are listening that you can start to open your mind and just question, have a genuine curiosity of how I actually am in my dynamic with a partner, or even if you're single, how am relationships to bounce that idea off of? Go off of your friendships, your family, and your coworkers. How are you acting around them? Because a core concept of how to be a resilient person, and that how I talk about being a resilient person, is the way that you do anything is the way you are going to do everything. That is a principle of a very high quality human being. It doesn't matter who you are, what stage of life that you are in. The way that you do everything is the way you do anything. Write that down somewhere in your personal journal or anything, and just start to notice in the smallest ways, it'll reflect in the biggest, and then opposite. We'll cover more of that in the future, but let me get back to what we were just talking about right here. And the thing is, going back to chemistry, just because somebody isn't compatible with you, whether they're a partner or a friend or a job, it doesn't make them a bad person. Like, so many people, just because you're not compatible, like, it didn't end up working out because you want to move to a different state and this person doesn't want to do a long-distance relationship, or they much rather preferred and they had priority over in their life where they're in a building stage, like where they might not be able to spend all their time with you because they're focused on their athletics and their job, right? You also have to check yourself. Like, was I demanding too much? And if not, you obviously, like, there's plenty of people who I know that haven't. Like, workaholism is a very real thing, and, you know, not prioritizing your partner. Nonetheless, that can come up, like I had said, in exposing of just personal habits that are outside of the relationship itself, but is more reflective on the other person. And they might, just because they're not aware of it, does not make them a bad person. It takes a really great partner to be able to communicate using I sentences, to be able to help bring an aspect of somebody that needs to be worked on to light, to surface safely and openly, even for guys. And men alike, you know, because that's very stigmatized within, like, guy culture and on the relationships of the guy side, where it's like, you're not really, you know, there's that stigma of not how you've been brought up and your relationships with people. And as far as I'm concerned, it's one of the most masculine things that you can do, is being able to firmly and assertively, effectively be able to communicate how you feel and have a solid understanding of where your habits originated from. And I think therapy is a great option to go to. Putting yourself around people who you know are smarter, more intelligent, more well-developed in certain ways, whether that would be business, athletics, and personal life, spiritual life. How close are they to God, and whatever definition that you call God, whether it's universe or whatever, you understand what I mean. Point is, putting yourself around really high quality people is what's going to help that, along with therapy, because that person, as long as they're a good therapist, will challenge you to be able to say, I am this way because of this event that happened in my life, people that I were around because I was trying to prove my self-worth, and so on and so forth. You know what I mean? So just because somebody's working on themselves, they might not be aware, as long as they're open-minded to be able to learn, you'll be going in a good direction. And I want to bring this up because, and this I'm just reading off of my notes, that's why I'm looking off to my side. I got my computer right next to me. I was dating somebody years ago, and she was a great person, but we just weren't compatible. We had started with chemistry, and I'm obviously not using anybody's names, but we started with great chemistry. We had met at the first gym that I was working at. After about a year or so, I had asked her out because I hadn't seen her in a long time. I asked her out. She said absolutely. We went out. We had a great time. We had drinks. We had a drink or two together. We had our dinner. And we would talk for a little bit after that, but we didn't get back together to, like, one-on-one, probably about until a month. And then after that, hung out a little bit more, and then, like, all of a sudden 2 months go by from our first date, and now we're, like, hanging out all the time, right? We had great chemistry. She was a great person. She had personal goals. She was established. I was starting to get onto my feet and being a fitness coach and, figuring myself out. The part where we missed with compatibility is that she was much older than I was. And for some people, that age isn't an issue. The problem is, once I wanted, around the time I planned on wanting to start having kids, she wasn't going to be able to. So there was a bigger age difference between us. And this was a battle that we had both had because we really cared about each other. And we both knew each other were great people. That one thing, though, was just in the way. And we couldn't work ourselves around it. But we were together for a little bit. Like, we were together for, kind of on and off for, around a year. And it was a hard battle for me to get past because I was so focused on the chemistry that we had both had and the memories that we shared and everything that I attached my emotions to. And I had known better about 6 months-ish into talking. I needed a little break. And for the record, if you're going to take a break with somebody, just break up or don't. Either focus on working on it or don't. The moment someone says taking a break and living inside of that gray area is really shitty. And that was shitty for me to be able to do as a person. But again, I wasn't, I'm just being reflective. I'm not judging myself for it. The act itself, I wouldn't do again to somebody. Again, that's why you learn things, right? And I had hurt her after that breakup. And then I wanted to try to get back together because I thought, hey, you know what? Maybe I'm just out of my head. We can work on this. We can work ourselves around this. And then I didn't have a timeline in my head, but I was saying we can keep dating and seeing how far we can go. Because again, you get so caught up in the emotions, anybody can go crazy. If you're led by your emotions, even the kindest person could turn into a pretty upset and aggressive person, if you give them long enough. Not saying I was aggressive, not anything deep and emotionally, and being upset and sad and falling into depression or feeling that anxious, Love will lead people to do crazy stuff, or infatuation will anyway. Love won't. Love's pure and love's true and love's genuine. It's secure. Infatuation is what you feel in the clouds and you don't feel grounded. You know what I mean? But after I did that breakup and I tried to get back together with her, that trust on her end was broken and she entertained it for a little while, but that ended up being the breakup because it started to become toxic between us because we both know the one issue that we're both having is by the time I want to have kids, you're not going to be able to really do that. And on her end, God bless her soul, she was the one after that initial breakup. She saw through the clouds. She was able to see because, again, I had hurt her. She was able to see through those clouds and say, look, as much as I care about you, I can't hold you to have a fair life that you want to do because you want to go be a father. You want to go be a successful businessman, an athlete, and you have so much life ahead of you, and I would be a horrible person to take that. And obviously, reflecting back, that is an amazing younger than you who has a lot of life and doesn't want to get comfortable. So it didn't make her a bad person, didn't make me a bad person, but now that I've learned my lessons from that and I can reflect back on that, I don't hold any grudge, and whether she does or not, that's on her, but I don't because I learned a lot of lessons from that, and being definitive in what I'm looking for and making sure that we are compatible in the first place because it would, and it's, I've been through different relationships or situationships even where I'm be like, all right, well, let's just see where it goes, we feel good with each other. Let's just see where it goes. And anybody who knows, once you say that, that's kind of all right, a little more, and a little more. And that isn't nice for anybody. It doesn't lead somewhere. So a lot of times, to conclude that, a lot of times, just because you're not compatible, it doesn't mean you need to paint everything a red flag. Doesn't mean that they're a horrible person. It's just be ready in life. This person may have a certain situation that, you know, that they need a certain partner for to be able to help support, and that person might not be able to. It doesn't mean that you go and just, whether, again, they're an intimate relationship, a friend, a coworker, whatever, that's just their path. So now that frees you up to go look for people who are more compatible. And yeah, it might take a little while to go and do that. But that's what happens when you're trying to build a high quality life. Patience is a thing. Having values and a foundation to stand on. It needs to be there, because otherwise you're just filling space, and it's going to leave you away from purpose and your personal meaning in your life and the callings that you've been gifted by God to be able to have on your life. So that it takes a lot to be able to do. I'm fucking killing this right now. Which leads me to a good point, and something that I wanted to talk about. A lot of times, we'll also push people away, and we'll paint green flags of this person. We'll paint them red. And we'll do that because we're not used to green flags. So let's say we are compatible with somebody, but we feel that chemistry. We might be compatible, but something about them, I don't know. Like you feel that you don't feel that drive to go out. Personal experience and observing and listening. Red. And we'll paint them red, not necessarily on purpose, but because now that's not going to be led from that emotional chase of anxious versus avoidant attachment. And yeah, you can actually have both anxious and anxious and avoidant attachment styles. But our own faults will get in the way of healthy relationships. And I'm sure if you're listening, the person that came to this podcast to listen to, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Something about you will prevent you from wanting to secure a healthy relationship with somebody else. Doesn't matter who it is. And I follow a couple of different pages and people that I've built a trust for. And this one man who has I believe his name is Quentin Hafner. He owns this company. It's called Black Belt Husbands, and it is a fantastic resource to be able to be a great partner from a man's perspective or a masculine perspective. It is a beautiful book to read. Instagram. He's taken his Black Belt Husbands Instagram page down shortly, I think at the end of this year, but Quentin Hafner is a great person to follow because he was talking about this as I've been reflecting on this recently, where there's 6 reasons that we can't get into healthy relationships, not because of the relationship itself, but more so the reasons of our own faults and things about us that are preventing to going into relationships. And I wanted to just talk about them. So the first one that I fully agree with, and I think is the entire base of why we can't get into healthy relationships and will paint green flags red, is because we ourselves have a lack of personal meaning and purpose on the callings that we have in our life. If you don't have a guiding light, a North Star, a vision for your life, then anything and everything will do. You'll say yes to anything that comes your way if you're desperate enough. You'll say yes to anything that comes your way if you don't have a solid foundation, becoming a high-quality person. And just so I'm not talking too abstractly, I'll tell you the values that I go by when I look for not just an intimate partner, but friends, and people that I will eventually hire for my business, past coworkers, people that I train, and people that I bring into my inner circle for mentors. I look for things like authenticity. I respect authenticity arguably the most because the ability to be able to express yourself honestly and truthfully while being unapologetically yourself takes, I think, the most courage out of anything that you can do in life. I value authenticity the most because it takes courage. Another thing that I value is depth and curiosity. Like, how curious are you about life? How curious are you about learning about new things, becoming a higher quality person? And how curious are you about me? Because I want mutual curiosity about each other. I want to be able to sit down with you, and I want to be down in your head. I value this so much because quality time is my love language, is my main love language. I have a little bit of everything of my love languages out of the 5, but quality time is my number one love language that I go by. And being mutually curious about me like I am about you and about life, and having the depth to be able to have a good, high quality conversation back and forth, nothing makes me happier. My friends will tell you this, and past relationships could tell you too. I have the best times when I am with high quality people having amazing and fun and enlightening and intellectual conversations. That brings me closer with my purpose and my personal meaning. Excuse me. Number 2, unresolved past traumas. And I think I don't really need to explain that one any further, because you will be projecting what you haven't sorted out from your past, whether that would be from your family, certain events that have happened in your life. And that can be so reflective and so projecting you won't even know it up until reflect on for yourself. Number 3, a lack of deep friendships. A partner, an intimate partner, cannot be the only thing in your life that helps you to grow. I can only speak from a guy's perspective. I can empathize and think about how, from a female's perspective, because I date females again, of what they would seek. But as a person who is trying to balance his masculine energy with some feminine energy, I can't just rely on my growth from only another feminine energy. I have masculine aspects to myself and I have feminine aspects to myself. Because as a man in the world and as a woman in the world, you are going to need to bring with you the harmony of both masculine traits and feminine traits. If you don't know what I'm talking about, let me just give you a quick little spiel. Masculine. Standing in my power. I need to be strong, mentally, physically, spiritually strong, because I can't just be passive to people walking all over me or taking advantage of me. You know what I mean? Masculine. To have strength physically, mentally, spiritually. Excuse me, I'm spinning all over the place, but out of passion. Masculine activities that help to balance that and challenge that and strengthen that are my martial arts that I train, fitness, my spiritual practices, my prayer, right? Well, that can be both kind of feminine and masculine, but I think you know what I mean. Activities that I like hiking and connecting with nature. I love shooting and, different things that I like to do outside, my hobbies that make me feel masculine and strong and trustworthy and reliable, hardworking, my job, right? I can't get all of that if I'm only around a feminine energy. I need feminine energy in my life, because if I'm too masculine, now I can't empathize with the world. And femininity is what allows us to see the beauty of life. Femininity, like creativity and the arts, and empathy for others, not just sympathy, but empathy for others, communication, being able to with myself, because I've been known in the past to have a lot of workaholism. And although I have very lofty goals, it was becoming just an automatic response, not even intentional anymore. And that made me break away from some relationships, friendships, and an intimate relationship at the time that I thought I was going to carry with me for the rest of my life. And I'm fine now, obviously, and, I've worked past my differences, and I'm looking forward to the next relationship that is going to help me harmonize and challenge me to grow as a person, where I will be called to being a business owner and an athlete and a husband and a hopeful father and family man and all of these things. If I am too far in one direction and too masculine, then I am disregarding and neglecting all of the other places in my life that I am being called to. That is why a feminine and masculine is so important. But where I've seen some, at least a guy, again, on the guy's end, fail, is that they'll spend so much time with the feminine energy and just purpose that they have grown softer and they lose connection with their masculinity. And that affects their physical strength, their emotional strength, their social strength, their spiritual strength, and that will have diminishing returns on the relationship as a whole. So, and that requires communication on both the feminine and the masculine person's side. But having quality, deep friendships as a guy, as I can speak for, is one of the most important things that a man can have in becoming a great husband for the feminine or the female. And that could be a whole other topic itself in another podcast. But hey, comment below if you want to see that. Number 4, addiction and alcoholism. That can come before because you can completely, again, neglect your partner and neglect everything around you, your health. How is a woman or any friend going to respect you if you can't look after your own health and they have to mother you and they have to look after you as to respect you if you can't do that? You have to have a certain level of self-awareness and you have to have these standards for yourself for you to be able to see and hold yourself to, for you to be able to be a great partner for your spouse, a great friend for your friends, a great business owner and leader of your business, your future family. You need this to be able to be a high quality human being. And if you don't, you will have failure there. You will lose relationships. You will lose personal meaning and purpose in your life. And you will lose the callings, the beautiful callings that have been placed on your life. They will slip right out of your fingers because you decided to have God's hand removed from the callings and purpose of your life. That's that. And I already just touched on the 5th one, which is workaholism. I've had that experience myself where it's just becoming an automatic response. And if you're not aware of that, your wife or your girlfriend or your friends or whoever will literally see that work and that job or whatever that endeavor is, you, or see that thing as like a second wife or a second partner. You got to be careful because that can really happen. It happened to me where it was becoming so automatic and I wasn't even doing it intentionally. It was just something that I was just reacting to and it wasn't a response anymore and I wasn't in control of it. And that is where things can go wrong. And then the 6th one, which is untreated mental health issues. This could be from extreme past PTSD, from events that have happened, or family traumas that have happened in the past, or, something that you have lacked in the past, or have had over too much of in the past that will show up in the relationship. And so you understand where that can come from. Anxiety and depression can manifest into very real things. As I've gone through therapy over the last year, from last Thanksgiving until now, I have realized some certain events from past coaches and people that I've placed in environments that I've placed myself around people and anxiously await for them to hurt me or anxiously await for them to just disappoint me so that I need to keep proving my self-worth to them. And it was showing up in small ways and it would show up sometime in bigger ways. And I knew I had that issue, but I didn't know where it came from up until I had people that knew other things outside of what I knew. And I decided to be vulnerable and open up to someone to be able to help me. Now I can step back into more of a harmony of where I bring my masculine and feminine energy together. And everybody on earth is susceptible to that. Nobody's safe. We're all animals at the end of the day. We are biological creatures. We are all susceptible to it. If you want to be a high quality partner and you want to be a resilient person, you need to be able to be vulnerable enough to where you know you lack, and you need to be able to not just fix that. I don't want to say fix, but be able to better that. These 6 things that I just mentioned are all things that can deeply affect your relationship, that are all things completely outside. And the reason that I bring that up is because these things directly affect compatibility with your partner that you seek, and the red flags and green flags of somebody that you might not be able to see, but things that should be talked about and communicated with each other. If not, at least if they haven't been improved or enhanced, that the other person is at least showing you that they are open-minded to be able to better that. Show them, don't tell them, is a phrase that my friend Tom uses. Again, owner of MyoFactor, great friend of mine, helped coach me too. Show them, don't tell them. Follow the person's behaviors. See the consistency there, because that is what's going to make you feel secure with the other person. Am I making sense, people? I know I'm making sense. Let's see if you're listening. And just before I carry on to the whole meat and potatoes of this thing, because we're getting to something that is going to help us have a little bit of a guideline and a North Star in finding really amazing, intimate partners so that we can share our purpose with somebody. But as I'm talking about secure attachment styles and anxious attachment styles and avoidant attachment styles and anything in between that, it's funny how our relationships with other people are mirrors of ourselves. And some mirrors are more reflective than others. While we paint green flags red, that can be really scary to some people. And just because somebody's not ready to be in a relationship with you does not mean that that is a bad person. It doesn't mean that you need to start going talking shit about somebody, because that's the emotional trigger that so many people have. Fuck them, well, they suck. Like, we don't need to go down that route. Sometimes if they betray you, that's a different story, but, I mean, you can just choose to walk away from certain things, you know what I mean? Or not betray, because they weren't never really entitled to you, but if they weren't consistent in their behaviors and then they say one thing and go and do something else. You know what I mean? And then it's like, oh, okay, well, then I see where your priorities are, and I'm not about that. And so you can choose to walk away. You know what I mean? It's nothing personal. As hard as it is to see that as not personal. But some people find it scary to level up. And what might not make somebody compatible with each other is somebody might see that person as enough green flags to be able to say, well, that's kind of scary because that requires me to challenge those parts of myself, like those 6 parts that we had mentioned just briefly ago. That will force me to be reflective on my own self in order for it to be able to succeed. And there are people that will directly communicate that with you and who are unwilling to do that work in this moment. And the of wanting to save somebody and wanting to be patient with someone and help them grow. There's a very fine line, and I think at this moment in time, the line that separates the two is the other person's willingness to change, like how I had said before. Because what makes it a green flag to come over onto your side is if they're willing to change. But what makes somebody not compatible with you is if they are not willing to at least be open-minded and start. And you as a person, if you are pursuing somebody else and they tell you that, you have full freedom to be able to challenge them, to be able to say, like, okay, like, I understand it can be scary. I've had these conversations with other people myself. That's why I'm bringing this up. And it's also a very real thing. I know there's plenty of people out there, people who are afraid to get into healthy relationships because there's that unawareness to that anxious and avoidant dynamic. And if it's not reflective of that, and if it doesn't feel like that, and if it's not led by chemistry, secure attachments can be very boring, right? That's why a lot of people might not feel so driven to be able to pursue that and say yes to you. But what will make it a green flag to pursue further is asking them free, like, well, I understand you might feel scary and like there's these parts, and you know, it can be very scary to be a part of a very healthy relationship. I would love to be able to, I don't want to be able to help, but I would love to be able to be a part of the journey if you're willing to be able to help better that, right? In whatever way, I don't know how to say it at the moment, but to have a conversation with that person open-minded, to be able to say, if you are willing to be open-minded to that, then we can have something very special. If not, that's okay. Next in line or next person, right? It's fine. You can move on. I just wanted to bring up that little part. Now, that was like a little on the sideline right there. We just talked about, for the last little while, why relationships fail. Because in order to know why a relationship, or how to make a relationship great, is to completely reverse the steps. I learned that in martial arts. A great martial arts coach will tell you what to do wrong so you know what to do right. I took that way, and that's how you problem solve. I present to you a problem. How are we going to fix it? How are we going to solve this problem? That is just a beautiful principle that I've learned from the martial arts and from fitness too, right? It's that guided discovery sort of thing. So, your solution and guiding star in finding and creating a great relationship with somebody is reversing the process. You can acknowledge the fact that there is a chemistry, because that chemistry is what brought you together in the first place. But before I put and cash in all of my chips onto the chemistry, before I just jump into the relationship, before I go forth with this person, before we find out later on the green flags, the red flags, the how compatible you are, how not compatible you are, is by not letting those emotions be your initial guiding light. That chemistry is what brought you together. And that's where you can start to just see if this person's going to be a great partner for you. The first step should be in identifying, after you just see that initial connection, right? There's that eye gaze that, hey, whoa, I know, what? Something's here, I don't know. I'm James, nice to meet you. At that part now is where we start to look for and start to talk with the other person and get to know them, to see the green flags, to go forward. I brought together a list, and there's many out there, but I put together just a short list of green flags to be able to just consider when you're talking with somebody else. Again, whether an intimate partner, a friend, a coworker, somebody to bring into your inner circle. But again, let's focus on the intimate. Green flags to look for. Step one. And then cashing in a little bit more, putting more chips into the chemistry, is, are they a good person? Like, do they treat you with respect? Do they treat other people with respect? I think that's why a lot of people, like a guy will bring a girl out to dinner. A high quality dude will, like, you know, and someone who has a pretty, you know, who's a pretty decently qualified human being will bring a girl out because, and same thing with a girl, go out to dinner because how that person will treat the waiter, or maybe hold the door open for somebody else who's behind them. They'll look for the green flag that they start to respect. And although that is consistent, that is the second green flag, is there are behaviors and is their attitude towards life and other people and you consistent. That is a love language that we can all speak together. is their consistent and reliability of their behavior. So yes, a talking stage and getting to know each other stage, as long as there's two really high quality human people, respect each other's boundaries, which is number 3. Respecting each other's boundaries and space while you are getting to know each other, and not just the need to talk or the need to not talk. Like, all right, I'll talk to you in a couple of days. Well, what the hell's the point of that? You know what I mean? Number 4 is that they know how to express their feelings, or actively working on how to express their thoughts, their feelings, their emotions, and working on regulating them. Using I statements. I feel this way when this was done. Not you make me feel this way when this is done. I feel great when you, if we're talking about love languages, and my quality is my love language is quality time, for example. I love when you take the time to put your phone away and spend this time with me getting to talk and have deep conversation. I feel amazing. I feel heard. I feel like you care about. I feel cared for. I feel looked after. I feel respected when you take the time that you do to spend with me the way that you do. Thank you. As opposed to, you make me feel like shit every time that you have your phone out, that you are distracted every time that we get together, or like this one time you were distracted and you made me feel like shit just for you made me feel like shit for not listening to me because you only half heard me. There wasn't a back and forth engaging conversation. I felt like you made me feel alone. Anytime you say the word you, it's casting blame onto the other person. And a lot of times relationships fail because it's about casting blame and not taking accountability for how I might present information to you. You know what I'm saying? You can almost say anything you want as long as your presentation is strong and effective. Using I statements like how I just said, I feel appreciated when you take the time to put your phone away and talk to me like a person and hear me out on my thoughts, and I get to hear you on your thoughts. I feel so appreciated, respected, and loved when you take the time to just listen to me and spend it with me, as opposed to you make me feel like shit anytime I see your phone in your hand and you get distracted when we talk. This is much more like positive reinforcement and learning how to communicate well. They make you feel like, number 5, they make you feel like you're a part of a team. It's not just alone. A great relationship isn't about independence. I keep your independence. I keep my independence. I'm dependent on you. You're dependent on me. A great relationship promotes interdependence. I respect your space and boundaries. I respect my own space and boundaries. And we have the same values, and we share this with each other. And I love how you make me feel about myself. Like a part of a team, and that you support my growth and I support yours mutually. I said about giving the space to yourself and the bond of other people too. That's another one. I respect your bond with others too, and the deep relationships that require for your growth as well. And I encourage it too. They have healthy relationships of their own. Not just us and the people of you having strong relationships with my people, but they have healthy relationships of their own. If not, that's a red flag. If they are just relying on your friends, your family to help take care of them, if they can't regulate their own friendships, that is a big red flag. And another one, they are true to their word. If they say they're going to do something, they do it. That's a green flag. If not, and there's inconsistency, obviously there is there's emergencies where otherwise, where it doesn't happen well, and like, something might happen. But if it is consistent, it's something that you might need to look after. And lastly, you feel good about yourself when you're around them. Not that you feel good about them when you're with them, but you feel good about yourself when you're around them. And I'm not saying about everything is great. There's that honeymoon phase. You're on that high. Of course, I acknowledge there is a honeymoon phase. But what makes a relationship great, the difference, is that it is built on green flags, respect between each other, compatibility first, and then putting more cash in on the chemistry. Seeing if you're compatible has to be step number 2, because after you've seen these green flags and other green flags, and you spend time to get to know each other like that, you have to see if you're compatible next. And this can just be how your lifestyle is like between each other. My lifestyle complements yours. Your lifestyle complements mine. I am staying around this area. I don't plan on moving 1,000 miles away towards somewhere else to do this. I'm staying around this area too. Relationships with your families, that can be a total compatibility thing, because and that could be considered a red flag too. But I mean, I acknowledge that not everybody has the great relationship with their family, and and that's not always reflective of the other person. However, if that's consistent across all their other relationships, then that might be a red flag to look after. But they get along with their family? And do they spend time around their family? Do they want family time? Because me, speaking from personally, I want my family to always be around for my future kids, hopefully, my partner. You know what I mean? I want them to be a part of it. Do we want the same things out of life? Do I have a high vision to be able to... Do I even want kids? How many kids do we want? Do I just want one? Oh, I already have a kid. I don't want any more, though. These are all questions about what are they looking for out of life, and if it matches up with what your vision for your life is. But that's why it's important. It starts with yourself. You have to have standards to go by. Otherwise, you are going to be led by your emotions. You are going to be led by the chemistry. They don't... It gets exposed, and then it gets harder and harder to break away from that person and to be able to go towards somebody who's of higher quality. And what are each of your values? I said a couple of mine. I didn't finish my whole list, but authenticity, depth and curiosity, thoughtfulness towards the other person. Are they not just towards me, but towards other people? These are just some of the values that I hold, that I bring with me. Are they also, when I say strong-willed and strong mind, if there is a challenge in one of our lives, and in my life, I value internal resiliency and strength. That is my top value. Because life's gonna happen regardless. Good, bad, life just happens. In times of good, I don't need to focus on the bad then after and be like, oh my God, what's going to happen around the corner? I also need somebody where there's times of bad. I know I can regulate myself and be strong. Won't last. Neither will good times. But life's a hell of a lot better when you have a partner that is also able to see from the bad and the good. We all will go through ebbs and flows, ups and downs of our life. And having a partner, a high-quality partner, to help us in our conquest of whatever empire we are trying to build, it matches completely with our purpose and our meaning of our life. It adds to it. So having your own values, do they add to that? Will they help enhance those and challenge areas of where there is improvement so that you can keep climbing higher? That is what makes a great relationship. So you have all these green flags, you respect each other, and you have compatibility. And you also then can focus and start to put more chips on chemistry. I have made sure I've gotten to know you long enough to be able to see that you are a great person, that there are enough green flags to be able to say, hey, I can pursue this. We are compatible. We are looking for similar things in life. We're looking for the same things in life. And you bring things to the table that I might not have been exposed to, that I might be interested in. The more I trust you and the more I respect you, the more I'm interested in your life. And that is what builds love. And what makes a great relationship not just sustainable and last, but to be able to grow and flourish, to have a partnership. Respect is what makes me love you. Respect isn't built off of emotion. It can be built off of emotion because of how secure you make me feel and how stable and consistent you are in your behavior, in your actions, and showing your love to me. But if you could see this foundation, this opposite framework to go from, by building a respect and building that safety and security to be able to help each other grow and then flourish with the chemistry that you have with each other, is what is going to be able to make love a choice. Now, some of you may be thinking, but what if you lose respect? Or what if you lose love because you're just so focused on respect? Having a secure attachment with somebody can be boring. I'm not saying that it can't happen, because I've been in a relationship before where it was built on respect. It was built then on love afterward. We really cashed in on our chemistry because we were with each other, looking for the same things. We both had things that were unresolved with each other's lives. And as it exposed later on, it ended up being where we had broken apart and gone our separate ways. But because we were so focused on respect for each other, we were able to love each other so much more deeply and speak each other's love language. And I'm not saying that because a relationship is built on respect, that that you can't go through a breakup and you can't go through a failure of a relationship, because once you go in that way, yes, it is going to grow, but a couple things. One, you can be growing in different directions. Not everybody, as much as I could support you on your journey, things do change. That is very realistic. But two, it is highly more likely to succeed because you respect somebody, to be able to remain faithful, loyal, not for nothing, to be able to support the growth between each other, and to be able to grow together, because the parts of you that are so strong, I might not be so strong either. So you complement me, and I complement you. We work together. We see the same values, so that our eventual family, that if we want to have them, they are going to grow up with consistent values, a consistent family dynamic, a healthy family dynamic, because for nothing, how you two are going to be, what if you have kids together? What if something happens? That child is going to be a byproduct of what your two dynamic is. So if your visions of having children, you might not be compatible in other ways, even though if you have children with each other, if you two stay together, you better work on it with each other. If you are going to... You are affecting another child's life. That they didn't ask for it from the beginning. That is just one of the reasons, aside from your own personal fulfillment, but having the respect of helping another human being to grow and try to flourish in the world, because it's tough out here, and you don't need to make it any harder on their lives than they do. You took any part of your day to spend with me and allow me to help just impact your life in any way. I deeply appreciate it. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for taking a part of your day. I want to share with you and give you a spiel of what I've been working on with my fitness coaching business, because I've been really excited to bring it from in-person to online to help more people around the States and around the world, wherever you're working from. So, I am giving in the description below, I'm giving a free one-on-one consultation because I'm starting off with one-on-one people as I'm building a more group-based and subscription-based business. But I want to help you out one-on-one. So, like I just said, in the description down below is a 45-minute free consultation that we get to work with each other one-on-one. I will also leave my website down below so that you get to check that out as well, and everything that's included. That includes personalized strength and conditioning via the Trainerize app that we get to go back and forth together, get 7-day-a-week support. We get to go through video analysis of the techniques through the app that we get to communicate from. I also get to give you a customized nutrition plan to your lifestyle, and that will also meet your goals, also including optimal recipes for you to get there. Mobility and recovery planning. Excuse me, you say that 10 times fast. Mobility and recovery planning to help build durability and to prevent injuries. Also give you 2 bi-weekly video calls for 30 minutes that we get to review your goals with a bonus extra 2, so it's weekly for the first month of video calls that we get to go over technique analysis, go over your action plan to be able to get to where you want and bring your goals to meet your lifestyle, as opposed to making your lifestyle fit around fitness. You know what I mean? So, if that resonates with you at all and that you would like some help, I would love to have a conversation with you. So, link in the description box down below for my free consultation and my website that gives my calendar. So, with that said, thank you for joining me this week on the Foodie for Thought podcast, episode number 5. We are back on weekly episodes. Thank you once again for taking the time to spend with me throughout the day. And with that said, don't go chasing greatness. Dig inside for greatness. Have an amazing rest of the day, everybody.